Okay, we've got a Zoom livetrak L12 here, and we're going to do a review on it. I'm not going to get into all the details of it. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there for it. There's plenty of how-to for the recording and everything else. But I am going to get into a couple of things here, actually 3 things. Into the faders, the effects, and the monitor outputs. These are questions that I had that I couldn't find the answer to, at least not on video. So after I purchased it, I had to figure that out. So hopefully this will help you. And if you're on the fence of whether you're going to buy it or not, maybe these will answer your questions. Maybe you'll buy it, maybe you won't. I like it. I would buy it again for me, but I had to do some other things to it, and I'll talk about that right now. Okay, so first I put an SD card. It does. I put a 64 gig card, SDXC, so it works fine. You just have to be in audio interface mode. There is a reader mode, and it wasn't picking it up, but I think that reader mode is for something else, maybe like connecting the USB. So in order for you to record and for you to be able to format the card and see everything, you have to be in audio interface mode. Okay, so the main question that I had was, when I'm in master mode, these faders are set out for the master output. Then you have 5 different fader modes, and each one corresponds to a different monitor output. So the singer here can listen to themselves and put in more guitar, less guitar, more drums, less drums, more voice, whatever. And it's the same for all of them. And each one has a master mode, so they can just listen to the master audio, or they can go into the fader of their letter designation. So this guy right here, let's say I was actually E. For phones, I'm in the master mode. I would hit E mode, and then these are the fader settings for that. So I can, lower it down, and then just put in whatever I want. You see how some of the lights didn't change here, and that's what I actually want to talk about. So same thing with D, and all the other ones. So you can go to master. And if you put them on master, that's what they're going to get. They're going to get the master mix. If they want an individualized mix, then they have to go into their fader designation, then change these. So what we're going to do on these is we're going to reset them here. And I'm going to put them at neg 20 dB here. Just to give you an example of what I'm talking about and the question that I had. So the lights tell you exactly where they are. Right now there's no lights. That means that if there's no light, it means that wherever the fader is, that's its designation, or that's the volume that it's set at live right now. So I go back to master, and that's where the master settings are. Well, what if I bump this? If I bump these all down by accident? Does that mean that the master mix went down? No. I can go back to E, and I can show you all my designations here. I can go back to master. See how these didn't change, even though these faders are down? That's because in order for you to change that, you have to move the slider to pick up that light again, and it'll turn off the light. So for example, see there, I'm moving the fader, it's not changing the light. Once I pick up the light, it turns it off. Now it's live wherever I want to set it. So I can set it there. So notice 2, it should be at neg 24. If I go back to master, it is set at neg 24. And notice how that's the only one that turned off. And that's because it's already picking up the last spot that it's in. So that's real cool, and that's really what I was looking for, because I was wondering, well, what if you change mixes? You know, this guy right here is at 4, and what if you change mixes? And you know, he's at 1, and then I go over here to this guy, and I mess with the mix. Then I go back to him. Well, if I move it, is it just going to jump that high already? And I've seen that on some line 6 settings, where as soon as you touch it, it goes to that setting. So even though you started off low and your next setting was really high, when you go back to that other channel that had the low setting, as soon as you start moving that fader, your volume automatically jumps to that. And that's actually, you know, it's annoying because it could be distortion or gain or something, and it'll pop it until you bring it back down. So they did a real good job about this, I think. And again, I'll just show you an example. All my D's and all my E's here. I'm gonna pick up the light and bring them down. D and E, they're all at the bottom. And see, as soon as I change over, it'll show me where they are, but then it'll delete the light, meaning that that's where I'm starting off. So now E is set to there. If I go back to D, they're all down here. And again, I can move these until the sun comes home. Doesn't matter. E is still set at the bottom. I go to E. I'm sorry, that was D. E, they were set back to the other ones. Now I'm going back to D. And again, these are not going to change. If I move this, it's not going to jump to that decibel level on this fader until I bring it down, turns off the light, and it picks up the signal from where it last left off, assuring that you transition gradually for any change that you do in volume and not just jump from one end of the spectrum to the other one. That was a question I had. Nobody seemed to have answered that. They keep going real quick about, you know, all the different mixes, which is cool, but that's the question that I had. Hopefully that answers it for you too, if you had that. Second thing is the effects. So there's only one EQ and one effects settings, and based on which channel you have selected, whatever change you're going to do, that's what's going to happen. And it's the same kind of thing with the fader. So for example, let's say I have channel 1 and I have a lot of effect on it right here. I go to channel 2, it doesn't have any. See? But I can go back to 1. Sorry, I put a little bit here. I go back to 1, it goes back to its original location. Now, since this is not doesn't have a stopgap like the fader does, it just keeps going. It'll just pick up wherever you last left off. So that's real cool. Saves a ton of real estate because all your equalizers for each individual channel are set every time that you select the channel. You can't change them all. You know, it doesn't affect everything here. It doesn't affect the global. So channel 4, here's my EQ. You got your highs, mids, lows. And anything you change here is going to change only this channel. Let's go back to here. The question I had was, what about the effects? So can I have one effect here and another effect here? What am I limited to? You're limited to one effect. So this is the global setting for your effect. This is the individual effect. This is the individual send to the channel. If you have a vocal and that vocal wants some church reverb, and you set the reverb to it, and you set the effect, then you go over to select to the second vocal guy, and he says, well, I don't like church, I want a little bit of analog delay, because he's doing backups. You go to analog, change the setting, but guess what? You've changed channel 1 to analog as well. So a little bit of a limitation. Not that I would use these effects for anything other than just a small little presence of reverb. If your vocalist has a processor, then that's the way to go. These are just a very, very small effect. Not really usable live, but I mean, nonetheless, they're there. So, okay. Sorry about that. My dog decided he wanted to be in the show, but I told him no. Okay, so the last thing, or last question I had was on the monitors. And I read some reviews on it and it said that it was not really, that it sounded distorted if you were coming out of a wedge, you know, of a single input powered speaker. I have one right here. It's just a little PA speaker with a XLR combo jack inside for the input. And when we do our performance, or when we do our show, you know, we have wedge monitors that are powered, and they take an XLR input, or they can also take in a 1/4 inch input. But the signal coming out of here, first of all, is tip, ring, and sleeve. It's a stereo mix, right? So you can't use a mono jack in here, and that's the problem that I've been hearing them people having, is like, well, when I hook it up to a PA or to a powered speaker, it sounds muffled, it sounds distorted. And that's because basically you're taking these two signals and you're canceling them each other. You're canceling them now. So you have to crank up your gain to be able to listen to it, and therefore getting a distorted sound. Not to mention that putting in a mono jack into this particular guy, you're shorting out the pins. I don't know what it does, but I'm pretty sure it's not good for your mixer in the long run. I probably get away with it for a while, but that's not what it was designed for. So don't use it like that. Make sure that you have a tip, ring, and sleeve leaving here. No matter what you do on the other end, this has to go here. Now, I say that with a little bit of a caveat there. So okay, so here's just the difference. Here's a mono cable, tip and sleeve, stereo cable, tip, ring, and sleeve. So you see how this guy just shorts out both of these? Again, you don't want that on this particular setup because it is meant to give you a stereo signal. So here's what you do. You can take a regular cable, like this guy, a regular stereo cable, tip, ring, and sleeve, put it in here, goes directly to the back of your monitor, and then it's going to sound very low. You would have to move your signal to the left. You would have to pan your signal either to the left or to the right, and then you'll get the right sound. Now, it's still sending some kind of signal, and if your input on your wedge is mono, it's not going to really short it out because it only has 2 pins, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's just not the way to do it either. It'll work, and then you just send yourself the signal that you want. But again, depends on your speaker and all. There's a lot of variables, so I don't want to encourage you to do that. That's one. Second thing would be to do is to put tip, ring, and sleeve, put a mono on the other end, clip one of the signals, and then, tie it down and just send the left channel or the right channel. Not recommended either, but that'll work. Third option is to get a splitter. They sell these that have tip, ring, and sleeve in, and then it has 2 jacks that take 1/4 inch mono, and it separates the signal into 2. So you can either send both signals if you have 2 inputs to the back of your wedge or monitor, but now you have to run 2 cables, or you can just run one, pan over to the left. You should be fine. But if you're running let's say something in stereo or a mixed signal, 2 different, like a keyboard or something, you might not get what you want, the effect that you want. The ultimate solution that I found was this guy here. Now, this is a made cable. I made this cable. Well, I bought the cable like this, and then I just cut the end. But I just didn't put this on there with nothing else. I looked online to see what the solution could be, and there was somebody suggested to do a sum cable, SUM, the sum of two signals. And what it does is it takes the tip and the ring, and it puts them into each signal goes into a 470 ohm resistor. So before both signals cross, they go through a 470 resistor, and then there's a 22 or 20k resistor from there to the ground, and you can do all that in here. It's all in there, but it's all heat shrinked in there. What that does is it takes both signals, left and right, and it puts them in through one channel, but it sums them up correctly to where you don't lose any sound. When I did this one here, when I went like this, if I was in the middle of the two channels, it was very faint. I'd have to go left or right. With this one, when I did that, the signal was perfect. I had both signals coming in. I had good line signal, and this is the way to do it. You're either going to have to research on how to do a sum cable, or you're going to have to find somebody who will sell you one. But this is the solution that you need if you're going to have powered PAs coming out, or powered wedges coming out of this as your monitor. So that was the thing that I had a question on. Nobody could answer that. Once I got it, I started working, figuring it out, and finally worked it out. So I figured some of you might have that same question. If you're not going to use this, if all you're going to use is in-ear monitors or just headsets, or you're going to use it in a studio setting, hey, great. You don't need to make this cable. Just stick in a headset, for your headphones. Stick them in there for everybody. Everybody's happy. Or in-ear monitors, depending on the system that you have. My thing was, I wanted this. This is my backup rig for a gig. So if I have my mixer that I have everything set up for, but let's say I lose that one in the middle of a show or right before a show or something happens, I always wanted to have a spare and that I can take with me, and I can record all the tracks individually. So whenever we do a video, then I could sync the audio from here to the videos and have a nice mix or mix down after, and combine them with the video and get a much better audio than something coming out of a camera. So I hope that answers some of the questions that you might have had. I know I had them, and if you have any other questions, you can put them in the comments now, and I'll try to address them as I keep playing through it. If you have specific questions, I'll probably refer you over to the manual, because it probably has more stuff than, everything is there. But if you have any of the quick questions before you buy it and say, hey, will it do this or will it do that, then I might be able to research that for you. So give it a like down there, and hope this helped you guys. Thanks.